Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen wa salatu wa salam wa Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajmain wa man tabi'ahum bi ihsan li yawmiddin. Alhamdulillahi alladhi hadana li hadha wa ma kunna linahtadi lawla an hadana Allah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I'd like to welcome you to another session from commentary in the 40 Hadith of Imam Al-Nawawi rahimahullah. And this time we are going to look at Hadith number 34, enjoining good and forbidding evil. This is actually a very important Hadith, and actually is one of my favorite hadith in general, because it's so much benefits that it brings for the self, for others around us, inshaAllah, and something which is so needed in this ummah. Anyway, let's go to the recitation of the hadith. عن أبي سعيد الخدري رضي عنه قال سمعت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يقول من رأى منكم منكرا فليغيره بيده فإن لم يستطع فبلسانه فإن لم يستطع فبقلبه وذلك أضعف الإيمان. رواه Muslim. On the authority of Abu Sa'id al-Khudri رضي عنه, who said, I heard the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam saying, when any of you sees anything that is disapproved or that is an evil, let him change it with his hand. If he is not able to do so, then let him change it with his tongue. And if he is not able to do so, then let him change it with his heart, and that is the weakest of faith. And this is narrated in Sahih Muslim. Commentary and the Muqaddimah. So the essence of this hadith reflects the Muslim's attitude towards munkar, which is evil. It outlines every Muslim's role in eradicating evil in society to the best of his ability. And if he is in a state where he cannot speak or act, then he repels the evil in his heart. Okay. And this hadith sets a precedent for every Muslim to forbid evil if having the ability to do so. Okay. Furthermore, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala defines enjoining good and discouraging or forbidding evil as a fixed role for the mu'min, for the believer. He subhanahu wa ta'ala says,
وَالْمُؤْمِنُونَ وَالْمُؤْمِنَاتُ بَعْضُهُمْ أَوْلِيَاءُ بَعْضٍ يَأْمُرُونَ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ وَيَنْهَوْنَ عَنِ الْمُنكَرِ وَيُقِيمُونَ الصَّلَاةَ وَيُؤْتُونَ الزَّكَاةَ وَيُطِيعُونَ اللَّهَ وَرَسُولَهُ أُولَئِكَ سَيَرْحَمُهُمُ اللَّهُ إِنَّ اللَّهَ عَزِيزٌ حَكِيمٌ.
Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, the believing men and believing women are allies of one another. They enjoin what is right and forbid what is wrong, and establish the salah and give the zakah and obey Allah and His Messenger. Those Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will have mercy upon him. Indeed, Allah is exalted and mighty and wise. And this is Surah Tawbah. So the essence of the da'wah, the calling to Islam, of those who are not Muslim and those who are Muslim, is enjoining good and discouraging or forbidding evil. Since conveying the message of Islam is actually enjoining good and forbidding evil. So this is what da'wah actually is. Thus, it is a mistake to think that these are separate matters. These are all one and the same. So continuing in terms of introducing this beautiful hadith, the importance of the principles which Rasulullah ﷺ details for us from this hadith can perhaps be realized when looking at the last statement, where he says, وَذَلِكَ عَضَعْفُ الْإِيمَانِ. And that is the weakest of faith, ya'ni the one who cannot do anything, cannot act, cannot speak, and then has to resign himself to hating the evil in his heart or her heart. So what about the Muslim who does not feel anything wrong in the heart when they come across an evil? From this hadith, this heart will not have true iman, since the weakest of iman is to feel some sorrow or pain, something in the heart from that evil, some distress, because that is an essential character of a believer. And when we lose that, then we really lose a great essence of our iman. Okay. As stated previously, this hadith applies to each and every one of us. Since the least action we can do is to detest evil in our heart, And in general, most Muslims can at least respond to an evil with the tongue in some capacity. Okay. Those in authority in the Muslim community actually have a higher responsibility in repelling evil because of their authority. And so because you get more authority, that means also more responsibility. The more status in society that you have as a Muslim, through profession or through your legislative role or authority in the community, then you have more responsibility. And particularly with encouraging the good and forbidding the evil. So in general, most Muslims can respond to an evil with their tongue in some way, okay, some capacity. And those in authority from the Muslim community and beyond, then they basically have the ability to stop the evil in general by force or by their hand if necessary. Okay. So going forward, okay, the Prophet ﷺ says, starts the hadith off, مَنْ رَأَى مِنْكُمْ مُنْكَرًا فَلْيُغَيِّرْهُ بِيَدِهِ, using the hand to repel evil. Okay. So the term فَلْيُغَيِّرْ بِالْيَدِهِ is translated as change it with his hand. However, its meaning actually means removing it with his hand. So here this hadith has a direct connection with actually hadith number 32. And what is that hadith? Remember? لا ضرر ولا ضرار. So there's no harming or causing or reciprocating harm. Okay, so there's a beautiful connection between this hadith and that hadith which we studied 2 lessons ago. And alhamdulillah, we see that all these hadith, they're connected in some way to one another. Okay, there's stepping stones for the next hadith, and there's direct connections here. And this is very important because these principles feed off each other. So scholars are of the opinion that prior to the use of the hand, so actually before you even do this, before you even use your hand, even if you have the ability to do so, that we should start by giving good advice and reminders to those committing the evil deeds. So the usage of the hand actually is only permissible, remember, for those who have that ability or for the people of authority. Okay. Furthermore, we have to understand that its use is valid only if other methods have been fully utilized and if there's no change in the state of affairs of the people. So don't just rush to trying to change it with your hand, because that's typically not the most afdal approach. Okay. If you can change it with lesser means, by nasiha, by using your tongue, it is more effective, it is more afdal. However, that ability to change it with the hand is important to do when the other methods, they do not cause that change, cause that evil to be removed. And in general, our advice should be to encourage and motivate others to do good deeds while discouraging them from doing the bad deeds. An individual's capacity to remove an evil differs from people to people or person to person. Usually one's capacity, again, as we mentioned before, depends on their rank and authority in society. So the higher the rank or the authority, the higher the responsibility. Okay, don't forget that. And thus the most important obligation in removing the evil is upon the rulers and the ulama. These are the leaders, as we looked at from previous hadith, about the obedience to the leader. It basically means the one who is in political authority and also the one who is in religious authority, like the Imam. Okay. So, but the obligation of those who are in power, who are the leaders, is to eliminate or minimize harm and then to positively benefit society. So, لا ضرر ولا ضرار من رأى منكم منكرا فليغير بيده. That the leaders need to know about that it is their responsibility to remove and make sure that the evil is removed, and or if that cannot be done, at least minimized. So going forward, this beautiful hadith. Okay, so advice given from one who has a higher degree of authority, furthermore, is more likely to be acknowledged and followed. Okay. And this holds true specifically for the scholar who in Islam holds the most important legislative power. But the admonishment from other individuals with authority will also be acknowledged as well. Okay. This includes teachers, icna-mas, the imams in local masjids and masajids, and the parents among others as well. Those who within the families are regarded as more knowledgeable as well. So each and every one of us perhaps has this role too, because when we get more knowledge, then we also have more authority because of the sacred knowledge that we possess. So we have more responsibility as well And of course, with that responsibility, inshallah, if we execute it properly, we will get great ajr as well. So everything feeds off each other. So whatever you're responsible for, you're going to be asked. Where Rasulullah says, "Ala kullukum ra'in wa kullukum mas'ulun an ra'ayyati." All of you are a shepherd, and all of you will be asked about his or her flock. So we will be asked about those people who are under us in terms of responsibility, in terms of those who befriend us, those who look to us for advice as well. We are responsible. Similarly, the icna-mas, they are responsible over us to make sure we don't go astray in a general sense. Furthermore, these individuals such as teachers, parents, local imams, community members, those who are presence of various Jamaat or Islamic societies, these individuals are also able often to correct the evil with their hands. So don't forget that. It's not just about just using the voice, but if you have that ability to change it with your hands, then you must do so, as is ordered and commanded by Rasulullah. So for example, a teacher or a parent can discipline a child if they do not stop bad or evil actions when they do not respond to advice. And the means of discipline, don't get me wrong, of the hand does not necessarily have to be by force. So for example, if a child has stolen something, for example in the classroom, the teacher or the parent can take it away from them physically. That's not harming them, that's just doing something which is right. And that stolen item is returned. And if they're bullying someone, then they're stopped. They're pushed away from those people who are there bullying. And similarly, so in this way, often, for example, if the child is not doing their salah, they can be reprimanded. Curfew or their amenities taken away by their parents, as a means of disciplining them, letting them know what is right. That the salah is so important that they have to pray. No ifs, ands, or buts. So for example, in terms of salah, if the parent is not commanding their kids to pray when they're mature, waking them up in Fajr, taking the sheets off, shaking them a little bit to wake them up for the salah, if they're not doing that, how can you use your hand when they're old, when they become an adult? It becomes futile. So we are responsible for our flock. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will ask us, did you command your kids to pray when it was time for them to pray? So don't blame them if they go astray because of your ineptitude or because of your negligence. We are all responsible. We are responsible for our flock. And thus we can use our hand when we have that authority over those under us. So thus using the hand should certainly be utilized to prevent munkar if one is in such a position. And this is what the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ is telling us. So we have to use hikmah, use nasiha, use our hands, and then the last resort is force. And if he cannot do that, then again with the heart. So in transitioning to the next topic from this hadith, principles of forbidding evil and verifying the evil. That's number one. So there is a methodology that should be followed and needs to be followed in terms of applying this hadith. The methodology is as follows. So discouraging evil is not just something which can be done haphazardly, because the advice may backfire. La darara wa la dirar. And if you do not want to apply this hadith, ma'adallah, and make the situation worse. So scholars have enumerated many principles regarding the forbidding of evil. The first step is to ascertain that an evil is actually occurring in relation to Islam. So many times people may do actions which are disagreeable in the religion, but which are not categorically evil or forbidden. Ya'ni something which is disliked, like makruh, which is not haram. Do not merely try to correct it, because you can add to the problem. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and Rasulullah are not telling you to do that. Telling you basically to, if you see an evil, something which is haram, despicable, or something which is clearly going to lead to a haram, that you have to stop it. So the first step is, number one, to make sure that this is actually an evil which is occurring. And this is where ilm, knowledge, is so important. Because all of us think they have knowledge. Because when we're taught basic Islam 101, which may or may not be complete, often it's the Islam which your parents teach you, and often there are holes in it, there's deficiency in it. And this is where the onus is on us to increase ourselves in knowledge. So there may be differences of opinion or ijtihad which are allowed in one madhab, for example, but are not allowed in others. And so if you just think that raising your hands during salah is fard because that's how you were taught, then you have to go back to the basics. What did the Prophet ﷺ say? Is this haram? Is this allowed? You can't just command people to do your mode of worship, which perhaps has support from the Quran and Sunnah, but there may be other opinions which are just as valid. So we need to have some knowledge, fiqh-wise, and if we do not know, then we have to ascertain what's going on. Is it really an evil? So these differences of opinion are not munkar, and we've discussed this before. Okay, we've discussed this before. And forbidding them will actually cause evil and division. So thus, we can actually do something which is causing a harm from thinking that we are trying to rectify a harm or evil. And this is what, unfortunately, many Muslims fall into that trap as well. And thus, we need to have knowledge to distinguish the dislike from the forbidden, as forbidden and disliked action will lead to greater harm. This highlights the importance again of ilm, of knowledge, okay, specifically of the Sharia, okay, specifically of fiqh, and common juristic differences. We need to be aware of those things. For example, being in America, alhamdulillah, we have so many different schools of thought. We have those who follow the Shafi school, we have those who follow the Hanbali school, we have those who follow the Hanafi school, of course, and those, for example, who follow Ahl al-Hadith or the Salafi school as well. So we have to be broad-minded. We have to have a proper mindset as well. If you're trying to learn and be a scholar in this country, I mean, you need to really be acquainted with all the fiqh. You're going to be limited if you just learn Hanafi fiqh or Maliki fiqh or just one brand of fiqh, and you're not going to be able to really help people. It may even cause problems, make more division. So we, as even in this country, in the West, where there's different communities out there, we need to learn all those different thoughts and be able to apply it, because the onus is on those who are learning the ilm to forbid evil and encourage the good. So it's not just that simple. Okay. So again, for example, forbidding someone to refrain from an action which is disallowed by one opinion but allowed by another. And we've talked about this before. A new Muslim who's eating chicken sandwich at McDonald's, to forbid him from doing that, while he was told by a scholar that it's okay. Now you're causing more ikhtilaf, more confusion for this young brother. And yes, perhaps it may not be the afdal opinion. However, it does have proof from the Sharia in some respect that it's okay. So this is lack of hikmah, and it can backfire. It can cause someone to be more confused, and they're just learning and just sort of getting initiated into this beautiful deen. Okay, so we have to also know about these other issues as well. So when an evil is verified, it is important to prioritize also the removal of the evil. Okay, and this should be done even before encouraging the good, as is directly related to the maxim we extract from Hadith number 32, La darar wa la dirar. And if the sinner is committing various evil actions and sins, the focus needs to be on the most evil ones, such as those related to aqidah, shirk, not praying. Okay, the focus should be on the salah, not specifically on what type of chicken sandwich they're eating at whatever restaurant. Okay, but this is petty stuff. You want to make sure that they're number one and have proper iman, proper tawheed. Then the salah, then staying away from wine or swine, those big hurumat. And then as they climb forward, then you could give them more advice, which may be the better opinion and whatnot. And unfortunately, this is what we get involved in. We focus on the petty issues, and by ignoring the big issues, we cause a detriment to those who are around us in terms of nasiha, in terms of forbidding evil and encouraging good. Okay. So going forward, okay, anticipating the results of enjoining and forbidding. Ibn Taymiyyah, rahimahullah, he said that if enjoining the good and forbidding the evil would result in a greater evil, then it is haram to do so. Enjoining the good should not lead to a better deed being left, and forbidding evil should not lead to a greater evil taking place. Furthermore, Imam Ash-Shatibi, rahimahullah, he says that a da'i, caller to Islam, must anticipate the consequences of what he says or does by hand. So for example, a da'i should remain quiet and not act when there is a likelihood that he or others can be subjected or will be subjected to physical harm or perhaps even death. So basically again, using wisdom. Okay, using wisdom. Not everything is black and white. Often we have the gray. And this is where your hikmah comes in. This is where you sort of use the other hikam and the wisdoms from the Prophet ﷺ in terms of what is the best thing to do. Okay, and this is what we're at. We're basically in this situation. How can we apply this hadith? How can we do the best while also preventing a greater evil from happening? Furthermore, Ibn Abdul Barr, okay, this is the famous Maliki faqih, Yusuf ibn Abdullah bin Muhammad ibn Abdul Barr, he says that if there is a possibility that the da'i will be verbally insulted or chastised, then this is not a valid excuse to prevent him from forbidding evil and enjoining good. The possibility. There's always going to be a possibility. Okay, because people in general do not like nasiha. They do not like to be commanded. And often those people who are doing the haram actions, they're often sinners. Okay, like it or not. But if it's very likely, then of course you can avoid it. But if there's a possibility, that doesn't just make you excuse. And unfortunately, us as a ummah, we make excuses for everything. Everything. Okay, and remember, excuses are something which are very dangerous. Do not make excuses, because the shaitan, he also made an excuse for why he disobeyed Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Racism. Ana khayran min, I'm better than him. He's made from clay, I'm made from fire. Okay, and then he even blames Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for misguiding him as well. So do not play games with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay, and do what you can, okay, in terms of your scope and what you're able to, even if it may be difficult for you to do so. Okay, when that happens, this is a jihad, struggling in the cause of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Furthermore, Imam Al-Qurtubi and Imam Al-Ghazali rahimahumullah, they all state that the fear of verbal abuse or blame is not a valid reason to refrain from forbidding the evil and enjoying the good. And many people are shy to do that because they just don't have any guts. They're just cowards. We cannot be cowards, we cannot be vegetables. We have, alhamdulillah, the greatest thing ever, which is Iman, which is Hidayah. And we have to also make sure that this Hidayah reaches different people as well. And we have to also curb evil and encourage the good, wherever we can do. So it should be noted that Ibn Qudama, he states that the prospect of financial losses are a valid excuse. Okay. But again, the whole question is, how probable is it? If it's very remote, then no. Okay. As these ulama have mentioned, such as Ibn Abdul Barr, Imam Al-Qurtubi, Imam Al-Ghazali. So going forward, okay, is narrated that Ubadah Wada'an said, بايعنا رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم على سمع وطاعة في اليسر والعسر والمنشط والمكره وألا ننازع الأمر أهله وأن نقول أو نقوم بالحق حيثما كنا لا نخاف لومة لائم. We pledged to the Messenger of Allah to hear and obey both in times of hardship and ease, when we felt energetic and when we felt tired, that we would not contend with the orders of whoever was entrusted with it, that we would speak the truth or stand firm in the way of the truth wherever we may be, and that we would not fear the blame of the blamers. Okay, and this is in Sunan An-Nisa'i. Okay. So here again we see that the Sahaba, okay, they made a pledge to do sam'a wa ta'a, to hear and obey, and that they would stand firm in terms of the truth wherever they were, and they would not fear the blame of the blamers. Okay, that's what we do. We fear the blame of the blamers. And this prevents us from doing any good in terms of applying this hadith. So many avoid advising for worldly reasons, especially if the one committing a sin is a family member, a colleague, someone from the same tribe, etc. And this is just really hypocrisy in a sense. Okay. And some may use the excuse of haya to abstain from forbidding evil. Again, we said that this is not true haya, this is hajal, this is cowardice. So however, we stated before, in the discussion of hadith number 20, refraining from giving advice is not modesty, but is actually being a coward. And this, furthermore, causes the society to become more corrupt because of the lackadaisical and apathetical and cowardly attitude of many people. And we have to also be fair with everyone and not be hypocritical. Okay, many speak out against evils present in other groups or communities or nationalities while remaining silent when witnessing evil within their own circles or their families. Okay, what type of hypocrisy is this? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commands us to do justice to everyone, and even if they're within our families or our parents or even against ourselves. This is a command from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But the situation of a da'i, however, still may be unique, and he may be the best judge of what action is to be taken when evil is manifest around him. Okay, so at the end of the day, you decide. And you know what's in the heart, what is best. If you are sincere, then you're going to do what's right. And it may be just being quiet. It may just be being quiet and not doing anything, because you realize that that is the best thing to do. And for example, Ibn Taymiyyah, rahimahullah, when he and his companions came across a group of Mongols drinking alcohol, his associates recommended that they intervene and stop them from this major sin. However, Ibn Taymiyyah, he told them not to do so, since in their case, alcohol prevented them from actually killing, enslaving, and robbing others. Remember, the Mongols were very ruthless people. They were savages. Yes, they, alhamdulillah, came to Islam, but they did many evils, and it took a lot of time for them to completely come under Islam. And Ibn Taymiyyah is telling them that even though they saw these Mongols drinking alcohol, this was actually better for them because of the great evil that they were in general involved in. So here, thus, a major evil was stopped at the expense of a relatively minor evil in comparison. So not every situation is black and white. Okay. Furthermore, responding to evil without delay, very important. So the da'i needs to decide the most suitable time to forbid evil and stop the evil. So he should not, or she should not, delay until the evil is removed. Yet at the same time, we should exploit situations in which people are more likely to be responsive to our call. Okay, what do we mean? An example of this is in the story Yusuf alayhi salam, when he was asked by the two inmates about their dream. Okay, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says,
نبئنا بتأويله إنا نراك من المحسنين قال يأتيكما طعام ترزقانه إلا نبأتكما بتأويله قبل أن يأتيكما ذلكما مما علمني ربي إني تركت ملة قوم لا يؤمنون بالله وهم بالآخرة هم كافرون.
So in these two ayahs of Surah Yusuf, the translation states, inform us of its interpretation. These are the two prisoners which were with Yusuf alayhi salam in the prison. Inform us of the interpretation. Indeed, we see you to be those who do good. He said, you will not receive food that is provided to you, except that I will inform you of its interpretation before it comes to you. That is from what my Lord has taught me. Indeed, I have left the religion of a people who do not believe in Allah, and they in the hereafter are disbelievers. So why is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioning this conversation regarding Yusuf alayhi salam, in terms of the dream? Because these two individuals, they asked him about the dream. Well, what is Yusuf alayhi salam doing? Look at the hikmah of Yusuf alayhi salam. Okay. When we're in an opportunity where people will listen to us very discreetly and with great attention, what do we have to do? We have to give them the greater hidayah, the greater guidance, the greater nasiha. So even though the dream which they're asking about is very important, even more important is for these mushrikun, these two mushrik people were prisoners with Yusuf alayhi salam to get the da'wah, to get the message. And this is where Yusuf alayhi salam is implementing the opportunity to do so. Okay. So he used this opportunity to give them da'wah and teach them about tawheed when they had been troubled by their dreams. He specifically told them that he would interpret the dream before they would receive their meal. So they were attentive. So through his wisdom in saying this, because the inmates were basically keen on getting that interpretation. But what was Yusuf alayhi salam telling them? He was telling them the da'wah. La ilaha illallah. Okay? So through his wisdom, the inmates paid great attention of the dream. Okay, so he first spent time in describing tawheed and the faulty logic of shirk. Ibn Mas'ud said regarding this, in a couplet. He says, verily the heart has moments of yearning and responsiveness, and moments of indifference and turning away. So snatch it at the time of yearning and response, and leave it at the time of indifference and turning away. Okay. So be keen. When you have the opportunity, when people are listening, give them the nasiha, give them the great wisdoms. And this is also important in terms of da'wah as well. When there are people who are busy with things, it's not keen to interrupt them, even though it may be something very important regarding Tawheed. But when they are in that moment where they can listen to you, then give them what they need, inshaAllah. Okay. Another thing exemplified by Yusuf alayhi salam here were his mannerisms and his great humbleness in addressing the prisoners who were mushrikun. He, alayhi salam, said,
يا صاحبي السجن أأرباب متفرقون خير أم الله الواحد القهار.
O my two companions of the prison, are separate lords better, or Allah, the one, the prevailing? So he, alayhi salam, addressed them as friends, neutralizing any notion of him being an adversary. Thus, it is very important to present the advice in a non-confrontational way and use the excellent manners which Yusuf alayhi salam exemplified in his ihsan. And we target also the errant actions of the person with etiquette, with manners, and we do not attack the individual or person. Okay. So be keen, be friendly, be wise, and be humble. These are important characteristics of a da'i. Going forward, advising in private. It is also very important to correct the evil in private if possible. Imam al-Shafi writes in a couplet on this, and this poem, this beautiful poem, is found in Divan al-Shafi, Adab al-Nasiha. Imam Shafi rahimahullah says, تَأَمَّدَنِي بِنُصْحِكَ فِي انْفِرَادِي وَجَنِّبَنِ النَّصِيحَةَ فِي الْجَمَاعَةِ وَإِنَّ النَّصْحَ بَيْنَ النَّاسِ نَوْءٍ مِنَ التَّوْبِيخِ لَا أَرْضَ السَّمَاعَةِ وَإِنْ خَالَفْتَنِي وَعَصَيْتَ قَوْلِي فَلَا تَجْزَأْ إِذَا لَمْ تُعْطَ طَاعَةً. Imam Shafi says, come to me with your advice when I am alone, and do not advise me in a crowd, as advice amongst the people is scolding, hence I do not like to hear it out loud. If you disobey me and do not heed my words, do not feel sad when you are not followed. So furthermore, from Hadith number 36, the Prophet ﷺ says, وَمَنْ سَتَرَ مُسْلِمًا سَتَرَهُ اللَّهُ فِي الدُّنْيَا وَالْآخِرَةِ. Whoever conceals the faults of a Muslim, Allah will conceal his faults in this world and the akhirah, and the hereafter. Furthermore, admonishing gradually, tadarruj. The principle of tadarruj is important also to the topic of forbidding the evil and commanding or encouraging the good. The gradual approach. Because sometimes, often, we don't have time to just sit and wait, but many times we do have time, particularly if those who are doing the evil are close to us. We have a little more time in terms of thinking about the best approach. But this is a key principle in addressing and fixing a habitual evil. Okay, so please know that this is the methodology by which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made the drinking of khamr or wine forbidden. First, He states that there are benefits and harms in it, but the harms outweigh the benefits. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says,
يسألونك عن الخمر والميسر قل فيهما إثم كبير ومنافع للناس وإثمهما أكبر من نفعهما.
They ask you about wine and gambling. Say, in them is great sin and benefit for people, but their sin is greater than their benefit. This is in Surah Baqarah, ayah 219. Secondly, He forbids the Muslims from approaching the salah while in a state of drunkenness. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا لَا تَقْرَبُوا الصَّلَاةَ وَأَنْتُمْ سُكَارَى حَتَّى تَعْلَمُوا مَا تَقُولُونَ. He says, O you who have believed, do not approach the prayer while you are intoxicated until you know what you are saying. Surah Nisa, ayah 90. Finally, He subhanahu wa ta'ala prohibits it outright. And this is in Surah Al-Ma'idah.
يا أيها الذين آمنوا إن إنما الخمر والميسر والأنصاب والأزلام رجس من عمل الشيطان فاجتنبوه لعلكم تفلحون.
So similarly from this, if you are giving advice to a sinner, it is naive to think that he will change or she will change into a pious person in 1 or 2 sittings. Okay? This is a long-term process. And this encompasses teaching, admonishing, tarbiyah. Okay? So it takes effort. And so the first focus, as we mentioned, is to clear him or her of the major sins, and then to advance them in good deeds, etc. So the same guidelines here that we have discussed also should be as methodical and focused as possible to affect a change, insha'Allah. Okay, so we have to use whatever we can in terms of our guidelines, in terms of our knowledge, in terms of our hikmah, in terms of our akhlaq and mannerisms, whatever we can do, and again, make that decision in terms of what is the best plan. So going forward, convey the message, but the results are with Allah Azza wa Jal. So in applying this hadith with its due effort, we need to remember that the guidance is beyond our hands. We should expend all our means and effort, but at the end the results are with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He subhanahu wa ta'ala says,
إن نهدي من أحببت ولكن الله يهدي من يشاء وهو أعلم بالمهتدين.
Indeed, O Muhammad, you do not guide whom you like, but Allah guides whom He wills, and He is most knowing of the guided. Surah Qasas, Ayah 56. So going forward, okay. Furthermore, the effort to remove and forbid evil should not be stopped when dealing with people who are very resistant, very recalcitrant in terms of admonishment or unlikely to accept the guidance. That should not dissuade us. We still should try to do our best to try to give the message and hope that they can sort of change somehow. Okay, perhaps that guidance will seep in somehow. Okay. So at the very least, we should at least do it so that we fulfill the obligation upon ourselves to give them the message. Okay, because that's all we could do. Give them the message. But of course we do it in the best possible way, in the most effective way. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says,
وَإِذَا أُمَّةٌ مِّنْهُمْ لِمَ تَعِظُونَ قَوْمًا اللَّهُ مُهْلِكُهُمْ أَوْ مُعَذِّبُهُمْ عَذَابًا شَدِيدًا قَالُوا مَعْذِرَةً إِلَىٰ رَبِّكُمْ وَلَعَلَّهُمْ يَتَّقُونَ فَلَمَّا نَسُوا مَا ذُكِّرُوا بِهِ أَنجَيْنَا الَّذِينَ يَنْهَوْنَ عَنِ السُّوءِ وَأَخَذْنَا الَّذِينَ ظَلَمُوا بِعَذَابٍ بَئِيسٍ بِمَا كَانُوا يَفْسُقُونَ.
and when a community among them said, why do you warn a people whom Allah is to destroy or to punish with a severe punishment? They said, to be absolved before your Lord, and perhaps they may fear Him. And when they forgot that by which they had been reminded, we saved those who had forbidden evil and seized those who wronged with a wretched punishment because they were defiantly disobeying. Surah Araf, Ayat 164 and 165. Okay. Going forward, okay, the required characteristics of a da'i, a caller to Islam. Okay. Number 1, sincerity and knowledge. And remember, all of us have an obligation to be, in some capacity, a da'i, a caller to Islam. Okay. So delivering the message of Islam and its admonition to others is a weighty task and is best suited for those who possess the best qualities and characteristics. So one needs to be prepared to deal with all types of people with differing backgrounds, personalities, perceptions, biases, cultures, etc. So furthermore, it should not be surprising that the ones who engage in sins and need the most admonishment and advice can harbor the most difficult and bad characteristics. Okay, but nonetheless, these individuals will need advice with the proper precision and etiquette such that it will, inshaAllah, penetrate their hearts and minds. Okay, remember, we need to penetrate the hearts and minds. That's what's going to cause people to change. Okay, not necessarily the knowledge, okay, but the minds have to accept it. They have to shake off their faulty ideas. The hearts have to soften and dissipate in terms of their takabbur, in terms of their arrogance and their stubbornness. and shed their desires for Allah's cause. Okay. So it is essential that a da'i have sincerity, like sincerity in terms of enjoining good and evil. And this is automatic, actually. This is automatic. We mentioned that some deeds often don't even need specific intention because they are done fi sabilillah. So whoever is calling to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, automatically their niyyah is there. But we have to just, inshallah, make it even higher so we can affect the most results, bi'idhnillah. So not having an intention in terms of da'wah is just illogical and almost basically oxymoronic. So giving da'wah, it automatically is something which is done with a good niyyah. Okay. Another characteristic which a da'i, a caller to Islam, should have is the ilm, the knowledge of the religion, as we mentioned. Okay, is paramount. Again, number one, you have to ascertain, is there an evil occurring? Okay, so it is necessary to possess the knowledge of the good and the evil and to be able to differentiate between them. And the da'i, he or she must also know what matters are good, so he or she enjoins them. Okay, and the matters, of course, which are evil, so they can forbid them. It is also necessary to have also full awareness of the situation, the state of affairs of the people before the da'wah is given. So we can't just be in our circle. Often people, for example, in this country, they don't know any English. They don't make any effort to learn English so that they can at least communicate the da'wah. It's great to know Urdu, but you need to also learn English so that you can affect the message to the people who 99% of them, or 99.5, don't understand that language. So it's illogical to not learn the language of the natives to, inshallah, communicate that. Because we are here in the West, not for the ma, not for the dunya, but we are here, inshallah, we should be only here, number one, for the deen, for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, number one, to please Allah, wherever we are, because that is the purpose of our life. It is not just to be stuck on the earth. These are just the means to, inshallah, get to the higher destination, to be able to claim the Jannah which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has promised for us, those who qualify. And may Allahumma jalla min ashab al-Jannah, inshallah, ameen. So we should also be aware of the state of affairs of the people who we're giving da'wah to. We have to know exactly where they're coming from, to be able to give them something which is beneficial. Okay. Additionally, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commands us, He says, قُلْ هَذِهِ سَبِيلِي أَدْعُو إِلَى اللَّهِ عَلَى بَصِيرَةٍ أَنَا وَمَنِ اتَّبَعَنِي وَسُبْحَانَ اللَّهِ وَمَا أَنَا مِنَ الْمُشْرِكِينَ. Say, this is my way. I invite to Allah with insight, and I and those who follow me. And exalted is Allah, and I am not of those who associate others with Him. Surah Al-A'raf, Ayah 108. Here, the word basira is translated as mental perception, intelligence, and understanding. Qul hadi sabili ad'u ila Allah ala basira. Upon insight, upon intelligence, upon understanding. This is the basis of our call to the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Furthermore, okay, again, looking at the characteristics of a da'i, hikmah and forbearance, or hilm. Okay. Wisdom and forbearance, these are essential qualities of the da'i, to admonish, to give the advice with wisdom, to give the advice with forbearance. So the da'i, has to use his knowledge with etiquette to be the most effective in causing a positive change to the person being advised and counseled. So thus it is important that the da'i say the right thing in the right way at the right time to the right person as prescribed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay. Imam Al-Ghazali, he says that do not convey the truth in a challenging manner. Thus we should not instigate or provoke the people but use good arguments as said by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He says,
إلى سبيل ربك بالحكمة والموعظة الحسنة وجادلهم بالتي هي أحسن إن ربك هو أعلم بمن ضل عن سبيله وهو أعلم بالمهتدين.
Invite to the way of your Lord with wisdom and good instruction, and argue with them in the way which is best. Indeed, your Lord is most knowing of who is strayed from His way, and He is most knowing of who is guided. So, Udu ila sabili rabbika bil hikmati wal mau'idati al hasana. Invite to the way of your Lord with wisdom and good instruction. Wajadilhum billati hi ahsan, and argue with them in a way which is best. In Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He will do the rest, inshallah. Okay, so convey the message in the best way, and the results are with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also says in Surah Ali Imran,
فبما رحمة من الله لنت لهم ولو كنت فظا غليظ القلب لانفضوا من حولك فاعف عنهم واستغفر لهم وشاورهم في الأمر فإذا عزمت فتوكل على الله إن الله يحب المتوكلين.
He says, so by mercy from Allah, you were lenient with them. And if you had been rude and harsh in heart, or hard-hearted, they would have disbanded from you. So pardon them and ask forgiveness for them, and consult them in the matter. And when you have decided, then rely upon Allah. Indeed, Allah loves those who rely upon Him. Now this points to another set of qualities, having forbearance, and also rifq, gentleness. Ibn Taymiyyah, he states that enjoin the good in a good way and do not forbid the evil in an evil way. This is important, especially when dealing with those who are in opposition to the message. Lack of gentleness may only harden their hearts. Furthermore, Imam Ahmad al-Hanbal said, people need to be addressed indirectly with gentleness when being commanded to do what is good. Because remember, they also already have a chip on the shoulder. Shaitan is advising them that look at this guy, who thinks he's all that. He's preaching to you. So we have to be mindful that they already may have negative thoughts about the nasiha that we are giving. So one should not address them with harshness except for the one who is cursed due to his immorality, in which case he is not forbidden from that. Okay, so only the people who are really the lowest of the low, then we can address them, obviously be firm with them. But those who have some hope, inshaAllah, then we should again be gentle, rifq. In a hadith narrated by Aisha radiallahu anha, who said, كنت على بعير فيه صعوبة فجعلت أضربه فقال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم عليك برفق فإن الرفق لا يكون في شيء إلا زانه ولا ينزع من شيء إلا شانه. Aisha radiallahu anha says, I was on a camel that was somewhat intractable, yani stubborn, and I began to beat it. The Prophet ﷺ said, you must be gentle. Wherever there is gentleness in something, it adorns it. And whenever it is removed from something, it disgraces it. And this is hadith narrated in Kitab al-Rifq, in Adab al-Mufrad, by Imam Bukhari and Sahih. Furthermore, another essential quality of the da'i is that of sabr or patience. He must be patient when faced with resistance from people whom he is giving da'wah to. Okay. Recall, we've mentioned this many times, Surah Asr, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَالْعَصْرِ إِنَّ الْإِنسَانَ لَفِي خُسْرٍ إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ. By the time, indeed, mankind is in loss except for those who have believed and done righteous deeds and advised each other to truth and advised each other to patience. Okay. But the last two aspects in terms of advising each other to the haqq and also to patience, this is part of being freed, preventing us from being in that great loss. So from this great surah, individual lacking any of these above has a deficiency which can lead to eternal loss. And so one of the themes of this surah is encouraging others to the truth, which is one of the major points of this hadith as well. Subhanallah. Furthermore, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Luqman, ayah 17,
يا بني أقم بالمعروف وانه عن المنكر واصبر على ما أصابك إن ذلك من عزم الأمور.
O my son, establish the prayer, enjoin what is right, forbid what is wrong, and be patient over what befalls you. Indeed, that is one of the matters requiring determination. Ibn Taymiyyah, rahimahullah, he says that concerning the call of good and forbidding evil, knowledge comes before it. Gentleness must accompany it, and patience must follow it. Beautiful advice. Imam Ahmad, rahimahullah, also says, command with gentleness and humility, and if they make him hear what he hates, then he does not get angry. Then he does not take revenge for his own self. This is sabr. So similar to patience is the quality of tawaddu, or humility of the da'i. And this is the attitude that the da'i is no better than the one who he is advising or she is advising. Very important. Okay, very important, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us the ni'mah of iman. It doesn't mean that we're better. So humility, along with the other qualities we've discussed, go together to soften the heart of the sinner. So all these qualities, they're perceived by the ones who is given advice. Okay, the one who has any good, he will recognize that the caller is humble, is sincere, is patient, is kind, has hikmah, knows what's going on. Okay. We have to carry these qualities, inshallah, because the people who have some good in them, they will recognize the haqq, they will recognize the good character. So the da'i, without these qualities, is much less effective. Okay. Because the advice often is perceived as hard and brittle, without sincerity, without that softness. Okay. Furthermore, without humility, the da'i can be viewed as arrogant, making them seem that he is above others. So we have to make sure that we're not perceived in that way. Other required characteristic of the da'i, excellent character. So the da'i should exemplify himself as one who is the best in morals, in speech and action. Okay. And this, of course, also in the sphere of enjoining the good and forbidding the evil. Okay. It is narrated by Jabir bin Abdullah, the Prophet ﷺ would say as part of the supplication, the salah after takbir, Allahumma ahdini li ahsani al-a'mali wa ahsani al-akhlaqi la yahdi li ahsaniha illa anta waqini sayyi al-a'mali wa sayyi al-akhlaqi la yaqi sayyi'aha illa ant. O Allah, guide me to the best of deeds and the best of manners, for none can guide to the best of them but you. Illa ant. And waqini, and protect me from the bad deeds and bad manners, for none can protect against them but you. And this hadith is in Sunan Nasa'i, graded as Sahih. Other important characteristic of the da'i. So in addition to all these great and important characteristics and things we've talked about, which the da'i should have, or at least aim and strive to get and increase, he also or she also needs to be able to connect to the person at their level, so that the most effective and the appropriate advice is given. Ibn Taymiyyah says that it is necessary to know the situation of the person being commanded or forbidden. So one essential quality in order to do this is husnul istima', or being an excellent listener. The da'i must listen to the needs and the complaints of the people whom he or she is calling. Okay. And another quality is important, which is shaja', or courage. Specifically, this is strength of the heart that is coupled with knowledge. Okay. Another desired quality is also generosity, being jawad. Sometimes an evil that is occurring is related to a financial problem. So in this respect, the da'i should contribute to helping end that harm by giving sadaqah directly. Okay, so practice what we preach as well. Going forward, is it possible for a sinner to enjoin good and discourage evil? Okay, so very important question, okay, because none of us are free from sin. And some people are higher than others. But this is an important question. Is the person who is a sinner just absolved from encouraging the good and discouraging the evil? Okay, so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in general, what do we know about this? I mean, this is a hypocritical type of action, right? So is it possible for a sinner to enjoin the good and forbid the evil? We know that in general, hypocrisy is a great sin, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Saf, يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا لِمَ تَقُولُونَ مَا لَا تَفْعَلُونَ كَبُرَ مَقْتًا عِنْدَ اللَّهِ أَن تَقُولُوا مَا لَا تَفْعَلُونَ. O you who have believed, why do you say what you do not do? Great is hatred in the sight of Allah that you say what you do not do. So it is important to note that the above ayah denotes a general rule, but there can be exceptions. For example, would it be sinful for an alcoholic to prevent his son from drinking alcohol, since that technically means hypocrisy? Actually, if the alcoholic did not do this, prevent his son from drinking, he would cause a bigger problem to arise. Okay, so thus context is important. And this is mentioned by Sheikh Zoroboso in his short, his beautiful commentary of the 40 Hadith, this collection. Okay. So Sheikh Zoroboso also, he mentions that every Muslim has the following 4 obligations regarding this Hadith. Number 1, ordering himself to do good. Number 2, preventing himself from evil. Number 3, ordering others to do good. And number 4, restraining others from evil. So if a Muslim cannot fulfill his obligation, this does not mean that he is disqualified from stopping evil. He certainly can act in preventing oppression, theft, or any obvious blatant sin that is being committed in front of him. Many Muslims make excuses in avoiding the commandment of this hadith, citing their lack of piety or their sinfulness. Perhaps for these individuals, doing a good action, doing a good deed like this, can instead lead them to a path of goodness, such that they will, inshallah, or eventually become more pious and away from sin. Okay. We don't know the plan of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Do what you can do. Okay, do what you can do. There's a way out for everyone, despite the great sin that they're stuck in. Okay. And from hadith number 18, we see the statement of the Prophet ﷺ, وَأَتْبِئِ السَّيِّئَةَ الْحَسَنَةَ تَمْحُوهَا, and follow up an evil deed with a good one which will wipe it out. So, evil should be followed by a good deed. Okay, so of course the intention of the person will be important in terms of doing the apparent good deed. Okay, hypocrisy, whether it is open or hidden, will never be rewarded. But if there's no hypocrisy, then forbidding an evil will be rewarded, even if the individual may be doing that evil himself. The sinner realizes his sin and wants to prevent others from doing it and prevent its harms to others, as in the example of the father stated previously to his son. Okay. Effects of evil upon the heart. The final portion of this hadith states that the least a Muslim can do when witnessing an evil act is to dislike it in his or her heart. وَذَلِكَ عَضَفُ الْإِيمَانِ, and that is the weakest of Iman. Okay, so if we are in the situation that we cannot act or speak against evil, we should say perhaps the following: Oh Allah, there's nothing I can do to change this bad situation that you dislike and disapprove of, except that I also hate it to take place. I do not agree to it, O Allah. Forgive me, guide me, and save my heart from being influenced by it. Beautiful dua. So when we are surrounded by sin or evil, a common occurrence that happens to us is that we become desensitized to it. Our hearts are less disturbed by it with the next encounter. And this situation is manifest, unfortunately, all over. In the West, in the Muslim communities where there's evils going on, this hadith warns us to act and not be apathetic, because this level under the weakest of faith is of no faith. So if our hearts are not moved when we see a munkar or an evil, then really there is little or no iman left, ma'adullah. So unless this action of the heart is practiced, the heart of a believer who witnesses an evil will be subjected to the influence of that evil. And a dark spot will be placed in that heart when he or she becomes influenced from the evil and performs it. Narrated Abu Hurairah who says, إِنَّ الْعَبْدَ إِذَا أَخْطَأَ خَطِيئَةً نُكِتَتْ فِي قَلْبِهِ نُكْتَةٌ سَوْدَاءُ فَإِذَا هُوَ نَزَعَ وَاسْتَغْفَرَ وَتَابَ سُقِلَ قَلْبُهُ وَإِنْ عَادَ زِيدَ فِيهَا حَتَّى تَعْلُوَ قَلْبَهُ وَهُوَ رَانُ الَّذِي ذَكَرَ اللَّهِ كَلَّا بَلْ رَانَ عَلَى قُلُوبِهِمْ مَا كَانُوا يَكْسِبُونَ. Verily, when the slave of Allah commits a sin, a black spot appears on his heart, and when he refrains from it, seeks forgiveness and repents, his heart is polished clean. But if he returns, it increases until it covers the entire heart. And that is the ran which Allah has mentioned in Surah Mutaffifin. Nay, but on their hearts is the ran which they used to earn. And this is in Jami' al-Tirmidhi, quoted Hasan by Imam al-Tirmidhi. So the result of evil actions is the bigger black spot on the heart of a believer. And this can occur to the extent that such an individual will be unable to differentiate the good and the evil. Thus, practicing this hadith protects our hearts from the influence of evil. Okay. So in conclusion, highlights from this beautiful hadith. Okay. This is another very comprehensive hadith from this collection, which has numerous benefits at the individual level and also at the societal level. This is specifically with how evil is dealt with. We see that Islam is systematic in terms of the way it rids society of evil from all angles. And if that is not possible, it is minimized. Furthermore, this hadith obliges every Muslim to act against evil when witnessing it, both internally in the heart and externally through actions and speech. And if the evil cannot be directly removed or stopped, then we use speech to stop it. And if we're not able to speak out, then it is detested from within our hearts, which is the minimal obligation of each and every Muslim. Furthermore, the deeper discussions and commentary of this hadith delve into the finer wisdoms in terms of fulfilling the action of admonishment in the best possible way. Thus, this hadith commentary describes an important aspect of da'wah, where advice cannot be given haphazardly, and certain guidelines have to be followed, as we discussed so thoroughly here. Thus, forbidden and enjoining should be done with knowledge, precision, hikmah, patience, and kindness. In addition, the situation, the condition of the one being advised should also be considered such that the advice is more tangible, potent, and well received. Okay. So with this, inshallah, we will conclude. Jazakallah khairan for your patience through this long commentary, which is well needed. And we hope to see you next time. Subhanakallahumma hamdik wa nashhadu an la ilaha illa ant wa astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.